What's up? This is our notes from November 12th, 2018. So this was Monday. We had a half day today. So if you missed the half day notes on global migration, I'm just going to do a quick little recap of what we did in class. So the focus for today was we looked at population patterns, and now we're going to look at how migration patterns ultimately impact population patterns. So we started with what actually is migration, and that is simply a permanent move to a new location. And that can be a location within the country, or it can be a location outside of the country you are currently located, but it always involves something from a point to another point. So it has to be, I'm moving from point A to point B. The second thing we talked about was the difference between emigration and immigration. So if I'm an immigrant, I'm moving from. If I'm an immigrant, I'm moving to. And one of the things I know that the AP curriculum focuses on is this term net in migration and net out migration. So when we're looking at countries that are net in migration, these are places where there is lots of immigration. So we're looking at more developed countries that tend to be located in North America and Europe. So if we are a country that has high GDPs, high opportunities, Western, we are looking at more net in migration. And the second one is net out migration, which again is a negative growth. So we have more people leaving than coming in. And these would be consistent with countries that are poorer. So we're talking closer to our stage 2 of our DTM model. So if we were ever to get a question about how can we relate migration to the demographic transition in a stage 2 country, we're going to have lots of net out migration. And in a stage 4 country, we're going to have lots of net in migration, with the exception of places that restrict the immigration, such as Japan, would be the really only exception. The other thing that is always on the AP test is this guy Ravenstein's laws of migration. So I have there's about 7 of them, but I put the 4 most important ones, and we'll kind of look more in depth at them later. But some of the ones that are important are most migrants move short distances. So if you looked at trends from places, and we'll look more at different migrant groups and where they're actually moving. So if we took immigrants from Central America, most of them move towards North America. If we have most immigrants from the Middle East or from Africa, they tend to move towards Europe. So it is very short distances. And when they do move longer distances, they always tend to move to places that are larger cities, and it's only for economic reasons. So they're not going to move from Africa to the middle of Nebraska to try to find a job. So they're going to move from a place that is poorer to a place that has lots of opportunities. So that would be your larger cities around the country. That would be your New York City, your Washington, D.C., your Philadelphia, your L.A., your San Francisco, your Chicago. Number 3 would be urban residents are less migratory than people in rural areas. So you are less likely to move if you live in a large city than you are in a rural area. So the way I always like to explain it is, most of you guys at some point in your life will live in a big city, whether that's to go to college or whether that's to go to work. You will look for an opportunity in a large city, at least at one point in your life or another. And that is because the opportunity is there to make more money and to be provided. And then once you are there, it is much less likely for you to move from the large city into a rural area. And we'll get to more about why that happens later. The last one here is families are less likely to make international moves than single adults. Pretty simple. You have less people to worry about or less things to worry about, you're more likely to move internationally than you would be if you moved internally. So instead of moving, an example, I'm not married, but I have a fiance. I'm going to be married in June, so I am less likely to move once I had been married than if I had been single. Statistically, females move over short distances and males are more migratory over long distances. Push-pull factors, which you guys learned about in U.S. history and world history, can be cultural, economic, and environmental. And then I just put some examples here. So what we're looking for when we're looking at these push and pull factors is what pushes someone away from a place versus what is attractive about a place or pulls them in. So it can, and you guys can look closer at this, but these are examples of both push and pull factors. As far as the map here, and I'll see if I can click on it for you. What we're seeing here and what you're looking at, and I'll try to fast forward a little bit here for us, but you can kind of see the patterns of people coming in over time. So we can see kind of in America, we kind of start, Western Europe, then we have like Eastern Europe, and you can start to see China getting involved. And then as we get into the 1900s, we're going to notice that there's going to be some Central and South American migrants. We're going to start to see some African migrants. So this is just kind of a gauge, a trend of what it looks like in America. And then here, this simply is, let me fix this here. This simply is where people migrate. So if we looked at, let's see if I can find Montgomery County. Montgomery County, Maryland, the foreign-born population 230,000 to 873,000. So high percentage, and based on the color, they can basically place which types of migrants are coming in. So for us, it would be a high percentage of Latin Americans. We can see in these places tend to be more Europe-based. Up in the north will be more Canada, a lot of Latin America, so on and so forth. Intervening obstacles are reasons that people can't make it to another place or hinders migration. So that can be physical, that can be visa requirements or political limitations for people. So for political limitations, think of Cuba and the people in Cuba that wanted to move out that can't. I use the example of baseball players in Cuba. Every baseball player wants to play in America in the major leagues, but can't get out of Cuba unless they do a couple of different things that we're going to kind of talk about in the future. Not all migration is voluntary. So the three that they always want you to remember are the slave trade, the Native Americans in America, and then the last one there is refugees. So if we looked at refugee percentage, you can kind of see, all right, lots in Africa. And as far as who is getting the refugees, all right, the places that have, net in migration are getting most of these refugees. And we can kind of see some trends as far as where these Latin American and places around the world are coming into America. And we can kind of see that they're all kind of along the coastline with the exception of Illinois, which obviously has Chicago. All right, the last couple slides here. Internal migration, so we talked about international. This is permanent move within a country. So we talked about stage 2 countries don't have lots of internal migration. Internal migration will be reserved for the 3rd and 4th stages. The two different types are interregional. So this is a movement from region to region. So we're looking at people going to college, people that live in the DC metro area that are going to go to college on the West Coast, or they're going to relocate for college specifically, or an economic opportunity that comes forth. So you guys will have friends that go to college in a large city in a different region and will want to stay in those regions because they like it so much. That would be an example of interregional migration. And then the last one here before I stop is intra-regional, which is movement within the region. And we came up with some good examples. Basically, this is people that move from large cities to rural areas. So think of we're moving from DC to out towards our areas, maybe not necessarily rural, but Damascus, Frederick County, even Anne Arundel County, more rural areas. And some reasons that we came up with are maybe cost of living is too high, or maybe, you have a large family and you need more space. So that was kind of what we did today. If you missed it, please make sure you check it out, and I will make sure to remind everybody. Thank you.